Your iPhone costs $300 because China is losing money on every one they make. Your $5 t-shirt costs them $7 to produce. That cheap solar panel on your neighbor's roof, the company that made it just went bankrupt. And your Amazon cart filled with products that somehow keep getting cheaper every year. That's not a miracle of capitalism. That's the death rattle of an empire that trapped itself in a system where everyone has to keep producing more for less until the whole thing collapses. And it's collapsing right now. In 2024, China's industrial profits fell 20% despite record exports. They're making more stuff than ever and earning less from all of it. This isn't a recession. This is something worse. It's a race to the bottom where nobody wins and nobody can stop running. And when it finally breaks, every cheap thing you've gotten used to buying is about to triple in price. Let me show you how the trap works, why China can't escape it, and what you need to do before the breaking point arrives. Here's what they don't tell you about cheap goods. They're only cheap because someone is losing money making them, and right now, that someone is China. Take solar panels. In 2023, China produced twice as many solar panels as the entire world needed. Not wanted, needed twice the demand. Prices fell 40% in a single year. Companies sold panels below the cost of materials just to move inventory. Dozens went bankrupt. But the big ones kept producing because stopping meant layoffs. And layoffs meant political problems. And political problems meant local government officials losing their jobs. So they kept the factories running. Losing money on every panel but making it up in ... nothing. There's no making it up. It's just loss. Continuous, accelerating loss. And the same thing is happening in electric vehicles. Over 100 Chinese EV brands fighting for the same market, each one cutting prices to survive, each price cut forcing competitors to cut deeper. The government steps in with subsidies to prevent mass failures. But subsidies don't fix the problem. They feed it. More supply, lower prices, thinner margins, bigger subsidies. It's a treadmill that speeds up every time someone tries to step off. This is called the involution trap, and it's not new. Rome did this. In the late empire, vast estates worked by slaves produced so much grain that prices collapsed. Small farmers couldn't compete. They sold their land and moved to cities. The empire kept producing food nobody could afford to buy. And the economic base that sustained Rome, the small landowner class, disappeared. When the barbarians came, there was nobody left to defend the frontier because the people who used to live there had been priced out of existence. China isn't facing barbarians, but it is facing the same structural problem. They've optimized production so efficiently that they've destroyed profitability. And without profit, you can't pay workers. Without workers getting paid, you can't create consumers. Without consumers, you can't sell the products you're making. The whole system starts eating itself. And here's the thing, China's leaders know this. They're not stupid. They've been talking about rebalancing the economy for 15 years, shifting from export-driven manufacturing to domestic consumption, building a middle class that buys Chinese products instead of just making them for foreigners. But rebalancing takes time and political will. And every time they try to slow down production, local governments panic. Because local governments borrowed money to build factories, and those loans have to be paid back with more production, so they can't stop. The debt demands growth. Growth demands production. Production demands lower prices. Lower prices destroy profit, and the cycle continues. Now let me show you the scale of this trap, because most people don't understand how deep it goes. China's steel production capacity is larger than the rest of the world combined. They can produce more steel than every other country on Earth needs. And they do, except nobody's buying it all. So prices fall. And when prices fall, steel companies lose money. But they can't shut down because the local governments that funded them need the output numbers to look good. The factories employ thousands. Closing them means riots. So the factories keep running, selling steel at a loss. The government covers the loss with loans. The loans add to the debt. The debt requires growth. And the only way to show growth is to produce more steel that nobody wants. It's not just steel. It's cement. It's aluminum. It's chemicals. It's solar panels and batteries and electric cars. Entire industries locked in a system where the only way to survive is to keep producing things that lose money. But here's where it gets personal. Because all that cheap production, it's been subsidizing your life, your electronics, your clothes, your furniture, the stuff that fills your house and costs half what it did 20 years ago. That wasn't innovation. That was China losing money so you could buy cheap. And it worked. For a while, Western consumers got abundance without inflation. China got growth without profit. Everybody was happy, except the system was always unsustainable. You can't lose money forever, not even if you're a government. Eventually, the debt becomes too large, the subsidies too expensive, the political costs too high. And when that happens, the cheap goods stop being cheap. Let me give you a number that will change how you see everything. In 2024, China's industrial profits fell by over 20%. That's despite exports staying strong. They're shipping more products than ever, and making less money on every single one. Now think about what that means. Every product coming out of China is generating less revenue. Less revenue means less money to pay workers, less money to pay back loans. less money to invest in the next generation of factories. The whole system is compressing. Tighter margins, lower wages, higher debt. And it can't stop because stopping means admitting the growth model failed. So what happens next? Here's what the Chinese government doesn't want you to know. They tried to fix this before. In 2015, they faced the same problem in coal and steel: overproduction, falling prices, massive losses. They stepped in and cut capacity by force, shut down mines, merged factories, fired hundreds of thousands of workers. It was brutal, but it worked. For a few years, then the provinces started building again because their incentive structure never changed. Growth equals success. Production equals legitimacy. So they went back to the only thing they knew: build more, produce more, compete on price. And now, 10 years later, the problem is worse. Because this time it's not just coal and steel. It's the entire economy. Solar, EVs, batteries, chemicals, electronics. Every sector is trapped in the same death spiral. And here's the part that should terrify you. When China finally can't subsidize production anymore, when the debt load becomes too much, and the government has to let companies fail, prices are going to spike. Not gradually, suddenly. Because the entire global supply chain is built on the assumption that China will keep producing at a loss. When they stop, there's no backup. Western countries shut down their factories decades ago. Other developing countries can't scale fast enough to replace Chinese capacity. Which means when the cheap goods stop flowing, prices double or triple until new supply comes online. And that takes years. Stop and think about your last Amazon order. How many of those products were made in China? Probably all of them. Now imagine those prices doubling. Not because of tariffs or trade wars. Because the companies making them literally can't afford to keep selling at current prices. That's not inflation. That's a supply shock. And supply shocks don't ease gradually. They hit fast and stay high until the system rebalances, which, again, takes years. So here's the timeline you need to understand. Right now, we're in the late stage of the trap. Chinese companies are still producing, still exporting, still selling below cost. But the cracks are showing. Industrial profits collapsed in 2020. Major EV brands are failing. Solar companies are going bankrupt. The government is injecting more subsidies to hold things together. But subsidies are just borrowed time. They don't fix the underlying problem. They delay the collapse. Most analysts think China has 12 to 24 months before the system hits a breaking point. Either they accept mass factory closures and let deflation run its course, or they keep subsidizing and the debt explodes. Neither option is good, but both end the era of cheap Chinese goods. Now here's what you need to do. And I'm not being alarmist. I'm being practical. If you've been putting off buying durable goods, electronics, tools, anything that's currently cheap because of Chinese production, buy it now, not next year. Now, because once the supply shock hits, prices won't come back down for years. We're talking about a fundamental repricing of global manufacturing. Western companies that moved production to China aren't moving it back overnight. It takes 5 to 10 years to build new factories, train workers, establish supply chains. Until that happens, prices stay high. So if you need a new laptop, new appliances, new anything that's made in China, get it while it's still subsidized by their collapsing system. And there's another angle here that most people miss. Western companies know this is coming. Apple, Nike, Tesla, every major brand that relies on Chinese manufacturing is already diversifying, moving production to Vietnam, India, Mexico. But that process takes years. And in the meantime, they're locking in supply contracts at current prices, buying as much capacity as they can before costs spike. What does that mean for you? It means the smart money is acting now. They're not waiting for the breaking point. They're positioning before it happens. And if you're not doing the same, you're going to be the one paying triple prices while early movers got in at the bottom. But let's talk about why. China can't escape this trap even though they see it coming. It's not because they lack smart people or resources. It's because the political system doesn't reward stopping. In China, local government officials are promoted based on growth numbers. GDP growth, factory output, employment figures. If your province is growing, you move up. If it's shrinking, you're done. So every official has an incentive to keep building, keep producing, keep showing growth on paper, even if that growth is just more unprofitable factories. The central government in Beijing knows this is unsustainable. But they can't force local governments to stop because local governments fund themselves with land sales and factory development. If they stop building, they go bankrupt. If they go bankrupt, the central government has to bail them out. And Beijing can't afford to bail out every province at once. This is the structural trap. It's not just economic, it's political. And political traps are harder to escape than economic ones because changing politics requires admitting that the system failed. And authoritarian governments don't admit failure. They double down. So China will keep producing, keep subsidizing, keep driving prices lower until something breaks. And when it breaks, it won't be gradual, it'll be sudden. Factories will close. Exports will drop. Prices will spike. And the global economy built on cheap Chinese goods will have to relearn how to function without them. Here's the historical parallel that makes this so predictable. Every empire that masters production eventually hits this wall. Britain did it with coal in the 1800s. Produced so much that prices collapsed and miners couldn't make a living. The solution was captive colonial markets. China doesn't have colonies. Japan did it in the 1980s. Overproduced cars and electronics, hit deflation, and spent 3 decades in economic stagnation. They still haven't fully recovered. And Rome, as I mentioned, produced so much grain that small farmers went extinct. The empire became dependent on a production system that destroyed the prosperity it was supposed to create. China is following the same path, optimizing so hard for efficiency that they've destroyed profitability. And without profitability, you can't sustain an economy. You just have motion, factories running, goods moving, but no wealth being created. Just wealth being transferred from producers to consumers until the producers collapse. And the cruel irony is that the things China is overproducing. Solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, those are the things the world needs for the energy transition. The Green Revolution depends on cheap Chinese manufacturing, but if Chinese companies go bankrupt making those products, the transition stalls. The world gets cheaper technology for a few years. And then supply collapses and prices spike and the whole thing grinds to a halt. So even the good intentions, the push for renewable energy, the fight against climate change, Pat's all sitting on top of a production model that's collapsing under its own weight. Now here's what happens when the trap finally closes. Phase 1 is denial. Companies keep producing. Governments keep subsidizing. Prices keep falling. We're in this phase now. Phase 2 is acceptance. A major company or sector fails. The government can't bail it out. Other companies panic. Production drops. Exports slow. We'll hit this phase in 12 to 24 months based on current trajectories. Phase 3 is repricing. Global markets realize Chinese supply is unreliable. Prices spike. Western companies scramble to secure alternative sources. Consumers face sticker shock. This phase lasts 3 to 5 years while new supply chains get built. Phase 4 is the new normal. Higher prices, less abundance, Western manufacturing, returns, but at higher cost. The era of cheap, everything is over. That's not speculation. That's the inevitable outcome of a system that's been losing money for years. You can subsidize losses for a while, but not forever. And China's forever is running out. Industrial profits down 20%, debt at record highs, demographic collapse reducing the workforce. There's no magic solution. There's hard choices that the political system isn't built to make. So the trap will close. The only question is whether you'll be caught in it or whether you saw it coming and positioned accordingly. Subscribe to this channel because over the next 12 to 24 months I'll track every indicator, every factory closure, every subsidy cut, every price spike. You'll see the collapse in real time, and you'll know exactly when to make your final moves before the cheap era ends. This is not doom prophecy. This is pattern recognition. The same pattern that destroyed Rome, that stalled Japan, that's now playing out in China. And when it completes, the world economy resets. Your choice is whether you're prepared or whether you're blindsided when prices triple. Make that choice now.